part, if everybody can silence their phones if they have not yet done so, please.
I do things a little different, I guess.
You can show mine.
No, that's all right.
Joe. What is today? May 9th, 2022, Sykesville's Mayor and Town Council meeting. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A moment of silence, please. Thanks, everybody. All right, so our first item on our agenda, as usual, is public comment. Has anyone signed to speak?
No one has signed up now.
Okay, great. So we'll jump right to our, oh, and I will, for the record, because I just mentioned it to the council, we did receive 2 additional public comments emailed to us this afternoon, which I have forwarded for the council to review and that have been added to the public record. All right, so our consent agenda is our first item of business, and it includes the minutes from the meeting on April 11th and the minutes from the meeting on April 25th, as well as a police proclamation, which I would like to read before I call for a motion to approve the consent agenda. As I mentioned, this is May 9th, 2022. Town of Sykesville proclamation. Whereas the Congress and President of the United States have designated May 15th as Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week. And whereas the members of the Sykesville Police Department play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of residents of the town of Sykesville, and whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agencies, and that the members of our law enforcement agencies recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas the men and women of the Sykesville Police Department provide a vital public service, and now therefore, the Mayor and Town Council calls upon the citizens of Sykesville and upon all patriotic, civic, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 15th to the 21st, 2022 as Police Week, with appropriate ceremonies and observances in which all of our residents are encouraged to join in commemorating law enforcement officers, past and present, who, by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities, have rendered a dedicated service to their communities and, in doing so, have established for themselves an enviable and enduring reputation for preserving the rights and security of all its citizens. And now, therefore, we do hereby proclaim the week of May 15 to the 21st, 2022 as Police Week, and call upon all residents of Sykesville to observe the 15th day of May 2022 as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to the community, or who have become disabled in the performance of their duty. And let us recognize and pay respect to the survivors of our fallen heroes, proclaimed this 9th day of May in the year 2022. So it be proclaimed. Thank you. All right, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
That's so moved by Councilman Schofield.
It is.
Thank you, sir. Seconded by President Carter. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so the consent agenda passes unanimously. First item of unfinished business is for us to close the public hearing and to consider, discuss, act on ordinance number 2022-03, zoning text amendment, planned employment center district. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Do we need to continue it first, or is it still
Or
open?
see if there was any further comment.
Yeah, is there anybody else? There's talent.
Well, sure, I had asked if anybody had signed up. Henry just arrived. Do you have any comment on the zoning text amendment? No. Are there any other public comments?
I think just to acknowledge the emailed comments that we had received from
Yes.
May 3rd to today, which was emailed out a little while ago, and I guess you added a few to it. So.
Yes, so yes, today we received 2, and since May 3rd, I believe there were 3 additional ones prior to today's. So we received 5 written comments to my count, and I could be off by 1 or 2, but at least that many. And all of them were opposed to the text amendment. Okay?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on ordinance number 2022-03.
Councilman Grassley with the motion.
Second.
Second, Councilman Dyer. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the public hearing is now closed. And the next item within the unfinished business is to discuss and act upon. Is there anyone at the table that would like to make comment with respect to?
I would just like Joe fill us in on what we got today, if that's okay.
Sure. So again, before you tonight is the adoption of ordinance 2022-03. So again, the recommendation that's included in the staff report was to move to deny the ordinance with the understanding that give direction to the applicant to make amendments, work with staff, and then bring another petition back. Since this recommendation was made, the town has received obviously lots of emails regarding potential deferral or to encourage us to continue to work with the applicant. We also did receive a phone call from the state. The Secretary of the Department of Housing and Community Development did ask that this item be, for all intents and purposes, laid on the table to give us an opportunity to potentially work on an amendment before council makes their final decision, and with that amendment, potentially take those recommendations and refer them back to Planning Commission. So my recommendation would be to take that offer up and work with the applicant, make some amendments, have them then bring those amendments back to the council at a later date to then be re-referred to Planning Commission. But again, exactly how we get these amendments to Planning Commission will be up to council, whether or not you want to, again, lay it on the table tonight and wait for those amendments, or if you want to deny it tonight with the specific instruction that staff work with the applicant to make those amendments and bring back a separate application.
Thank you, Joe.
Sure.
So I had a follow-up question about the process. If we did deny the zone text amendment, I had thought that I had heard, and maybe I'm mistaken, that you need to present a significant change in order to come back to present that to the council. Is that an error? Could the Warfield development team essentially come back with minor changes that we would then take a look at? Like, I want to understand how much room there is for negotiating through this process.
Yeah, and again, I think depending on what those changes are and what the evaluation is by the council when you decide to make that referral, I will say this: I believe those changes, really any changes, could be referred to Planning Commission.
Okay.
So when the secretary called, did he actually say they were gonna mediate that, or were they gonna be like a third party involved in this?
They did say that they would work with us and the applicant to make sure that whatever amendments are being proposed are agreeable to both parties.
So Joe, if I'm hearing you right, if we deny it, the applicant can come back to us with changes. If we table it, the applicant can come back to us with changes. So either way, there's an opportunity to come back with changes that is agreeable, that is agreeable with both parties.
Yes, I think either path takes us to where we've been wanting to go, which is we need to amend the petition. Again, I would just say, since the state did ask us to table, it's to me an olive branch from the state that we could potentially take up.
But if I understand correctly, if we deny this and move to a conversation, then it actually opens up more options for discussion. If we table this, then we're just continuing on this narrow path of these text amendments. So to me, a broader path sounds like if we move past this, what's in front of us, to open up the field for a broader discussion. Whereas if we stay with this text amendment, we're just modifying within the confines of that. So it seems like we have more options if we almost start from scratch and work together to make a really comprehensive, regardless of whether it's a text amendment, a different zoning, like it opens up more options for discussion.
Yeah, and I would say, I don't think anything is limited at this point. I don't think we have to work within the confines of the existing text amendment, even if it is tabled. I think if, at the end of the day, we decide it needs to go in a completely different path, then we'll still have that option as we're working through those negotiations. And if we want to deny at a later date, because whatever is coming forward is so different, or is, it's establishing a new zone, or whatever it might be, we still have that potential.
Do you have a sense of why the state reached out to us today and asked for the deferral instead of other options that may be on the table?
I don't have a specific answer for that. I guess I don't know what other options were potentially out there. I know, again, this has been something that we have been asking for, is to be able to negotiate some sort of change to the text amendment. Why that's happened today, I don't know, but we're here. So
Yeah. I may be able to speak to that. I had a long conversation with Secretary Holt as well this afternoon. And I believe that it was Secretary Holt's understanding that if we were to vote to deny the current petition before us this evening, that it would somehow serve to delay moving forward with a new petition, and that became almost the token of goodwill would be for us to not deny it, to table it. I did bring to his attention that was not at all the case, that a vote to, well, first and foremost, it's not at all the case, and I'll come back to that with respect to it delaying anything. But my greatest concern is actually rooted in the fact that we have gone through a public process as we have, and we've done so according to the letter of the process, and that many opportunities were provided to amend the petition between the March 21st meeting with the Planning Commission, and then their ultimate recommendation back to the council the following meeting. And then another opportunity to actually pull the petition, or a request on our part to the petitioner to pull the petition prior to a public hearing, was also extended, and that was something that was refused. And so I almost feel personally committed, and I actually would expect that the council as a whole probably feels what I'm about to say, which is we had a public hearing. We opened the doors to our community, our constituents, whose voices were very much heard last Tuesday. They made sacrifices to be there that evening. They probably deliberated in their own minds for quite some time as to how they would. Some of them don't like to speak in public, and still came before us with their opinions. And I don't want them to lose faith in what we said the process was made up of. And the opportunity for them to be heard took place, and is very much appreciated. And if we decide not to vote on this petition before us this evening, my greatest concern would be that we would not want them to lose faith in the process. And also, I wouldn't want them to think that their time was wasted, because I actually believe it is their turning out on Tuesday that brought us to this conversation we're having right now, and that is the one that was preceded by a call from Secretary Holt. And I think Secretary Holt realizes, after having spoken to the petitioners, that they are, in his words, exuberantly motivated to provide to us amendments and changes to text amendment request. And so I explained to the secretary that besides the concerns I just mentioned about us actually following the process to the letter, and that what happens next is what we promised them last Tuesday, which was an opportunity for us to further discuss and then vote on the petition. I personally would prefer to dispose of the current petition by way of a vote this evening, with the expectation that we will be able to sit down at the table together with the petitioner, with the developer, alongside of Secretary Holt and his staff, and including his deputy secretary, as well as myself and our staff, and at minimum, and certainly if we were to include any of the council, it would have to be less than a quorum for that conversation. We can talk further about that, but again, I would prefer that we dispose of the petition before us this evening by way of a vote, and then have that conversation, so that what does come before the council is something that is palatable and is a starting point, not a non-starter, as the current petition is. And then furthermore, I just want to stress that doing so will not in any way delay a new petition, whether we call it a new petition or we don't vote and we accept amendments to this petition. The process that will follow will be as expeditious as whichever route we take. It'll be expeditious, and it will be it will follow the same process. It will have to follow the same process, whether we as we've already participated in. So whether that be a brand new petition or an amendment, as we've been referring to it, to the current petition, it still needs to come before us, referred to the Planning Commission, the Planning Commission's review and recommendations back to us, and that brings us to where we are this evening, but only after another public hearing. So that's the mayor's 10 cents.
Mayor, I have a comment.
Sure.
With the advent of the new emails coming in,
Yes.
my job to tell you we're well into the 70s now, 71.4 specifically. But you hit upon something that I want to elaborate on. Not only did 71.4% of people we knew for a fact said, I object. There were others who, because of public speaking uncomfortableness, gave comments that seemed, but unless it was a definite I'm against it, I didn't count them. So we have a preponderance of people who said no. And from a leadership perspective, we have a planning commission who gave us a recommendation. If we don't act, we're basically saying to them, thanks for all your work, not that we care about it.
Thank you for those comments. I agree.
I would ask, though, our council, I see no reason why we couldn't vote this down and then work with them to come up with something better that they would be happy with, as would we. Is there any detrimental effects to us or them for us doing this that I don't see? I defer to you as a scholar of the law.
I don't see any either.
Well, then, why not vote it down to meet our obligations, then work with them to come up with a new one that they would be happy with and we would be happy with, and then we can get going forward. But again, as a leadership perspective, we have people who look to us for their work product and say, here's my recommendation. If we don't act on it, there's a message sent there, and I don't like that message either.
Thank you, Councilman Dyer.
So I agree with the leadership piece and the supporting the voice and recognizing. I think the other voice that was very clear, and I know I spoke to it, was the amount of contention. I think this moving past this particular one that was not co-created can really help us all start from fresh and hopefully really work together in the best interest of the town, as opposed to groups working separately. So I guess I see it as an opportunity to not only address what was heard, but also address what was heard about people not liking the contention, and that we should all be on the same team working together for the outcome here. And I see this as an opportunity for us to do that fresh, from the ground up.
So one of the, I guess, maybe hesitations that I have is that this project's gonna be something that's in front of us for some years to come. And we're gonna need a lot of help to get this done. The applicant is gonna need a lot of help to get this done. And the state has now reached out, and they're gonna be a key contributor to helping us get us across the finish line. Because one of the things that I heard last week was that what people want is they want those buildings rehabilitated. And I think I even read one comment that has come in since then that said something along the lines of having those buildings rehabilitated so important to one of the people in the community that they're okay deferring out even development in the land until we figure out how to go about this process. And so I guess I'm hesitant to, to me, being involved in different construction projects in the past, notably different than this one, there's a lot of gray in these things. And I'm not sure that it doesn't come across as the wrong message if we end this now and we don't open it up and allow for a continued conversation, even if that conversation fails, right? Like, I'm okay with going through that process. Let's say that we get another few months down the road and we still can't see eye to eye on things. Those few months and the ultimate longer term plan aren't that much of a delay overall. And so then maybe we would come back and have this conversation again and say, okay, we've tried and we haven't gotten to the place where we need to. But what we have done is we've offered goodwill back to the applicant, and we've offered goodwill back to the state and said, hey, we're willing to work with you and we're willing to work with anyone in order to get what the town ultimately wants, which is those buildings rehabilitated. And so I guess I'm more where Joe is in reference to being open to defer things and table things as we navigate forward, because I don't think we need to shut it down. I think any conversation can happen as a result of it. In terms of the process, I heard a lot of the citizens say, I didn't take down percentage points, but I heard a lot of citizens say that there was animosity. And I think there has been animosity. I think that there's, we both sides have entrenched a little bit, and that's my interpretation of what's happened in the process. I think that we've tried to follow the process. I really believe that the town has tried to do that. And I think that we've definitely missed opportunities, which I've said before, a few different places. But I'm struggling with needing to make a decision today in reference to this. I think we don't need to make a decision. I think we can push this back and table this for a little bit of time. That's kind of where I am right now.
Go ahead.
I just want to add, I told Councilman Dyer that there's no legal impediment to voting it down. But I will say this, if you're contemplating moving forward in a more cooperative manner, voting it down may compel the applicant to take certain legal actions with respect to your denial that may impair your ability to work cooperatively in the future. Whereas if it's still pending, there's no need for them to, if they took the view that this was an action subject to administrative review, for example, they would have to file within 30 days of the decision. I don't think it is. But there may be clocks running that make the applicant feel compelled to take certain legal actions that you may be able to avoid by simply tabling or postponing.
Thank you.
And that's sort of where I come in on this. Up until seeing Joe's email earlier this afternoon, I was on the no, we're going to vote it down because that's where we are now. But knowing that Secretary Holt is asking us to defer, and just as part of my law practice, a huge part of my law practice is mediation, negotiation. I've been looking at this up to this point as we had a contract. Developers want to change the contract to their benefit, and there's been nothing on our end in terms of, and I don't want to say it's on our end in terms of negotiation. I'm just saying it's everything is that they're asking for is for the benefit of them with nothing to us. I think it would be a gesture of goodwill on our end, given all the animosity, if we did defer it as opposed to just saying no, and then basically starting the process over. But I think we're at a point now where hopefully we can talk, negotiate, get to a point where everybody's in a good place, and I think deferring that will help lower the tension in the room.
I have a question. I guess for me, I see it the reverse, and so trying to understand. Because I see if we deny this and move immediately to working together with an open slate, we have more options as a team working together, as opposed to, I feel like this particular text amendment makes it too narrow in terms of our ability to kind of, because, there's so many changes from just even the public comments that they would want to make to that. We'd end up with something completely new anyway.
Correct.
And so I guess I see it as a gesture of goodwill, the reverse, to deny this and then work together with a completely open slate with everybody, I guess I worry that this limits us too much. And we've heard from the public in terms of this level of density in terms of residential and, them not focusing on the housing, but focusing on the bigger, or not focusing on the existing buildings, but focusing on the bigger ones. I worry that it constrains us too much.
So Jeremiah, you had said
And
something,
so-
I'm sorry.
No, that's just
That makes sense.
to both of you kind of understanding that piece of, I guess I see this as a better direction to go and a more open one to start fresh. And I don't understand, I guess the legal piece would seem like it would, if we're trying to do this in a goodwill manner to reduce the animosity, to work together, to build a team, it would seem like filing a lawsuit would counter that.
But their problem is that if you don't come to an agreement, they have lost their opportunity to pursue their legal remedies, and they're not going to do that.
Yeah, I've been concerned for a while, and I'm not a lawyer, but I've worked on a lot of projects where there's been litigation issues, and I'm concerned about the potential of litigation risk. And if we can reduce that in order, there's multiple positives that come out of that from my perspective. One of them is that you don't have to pay for that. Another one is that litigation creates animosity between the two parties no matter what, right? And then that also takes time. And if we can get rid of all of that, and Joe is saying that we have open options right now, that, okay, this is zone text amendments on the table. If we defer it, applicant leaves, comes back and says, okay, now I want to change zoning, or I want to change whatever else. Okay, then we're open to hear that. But we don't need to make a decision on this particular issue today. What I've seen so far, leading up to the meeting last Tuesday, is that the applicant's going to take whatever means they can in order to move their particular interests forward. And I don't know if that's true or not, but that seems to be what the case is based on what I've seen so far in terms of the documentation, including the letter that we have that I got today. Right, so those are all issues that I'm concerned about, and they're not driving factors. Look, I heard the public. The public doesn't want to have 600 new homes or whatever, and I'm fine with that. And I've said that in a few different forums. But that doesn't mean that I'm not open to negotiating and figuring out kind of the middle.
I'm not sure that anybody at the table has said that we wouldn't agree with your last statement. I think we're all saying the same thing about being open to conversation and development of something palatable for the town. I mean, so I was taken aback by what you said, Councilman Schofield, when you said that you were more in Joe's camp with respect to not wanting to shut down the opportunity for an amended petition, when Joe didn't say that, and none of us have said that so far. So I just want to be clear that the comments I've heard from the council so far, including my own, has been that moving forward means a changed petition a new petition, right?
Mhm.
And that petition would be created based on conversation and this meeting or multiple meetings that Secretary Holt has extended his time and staff and resources to participating in, for which will speak, I'm sure, for the group when I say we're incredibly grateful.
But there has to be a reason for why the state is asking us to defer.
No, see, please understand that my conversation with him today indicated that he believed that if we did deny this petition, that it would serve to delay the opportunity for a new petition to come before us and for the process that follows to start later. And I assured him that, as I mentioned already, that, and I look to Steve and I look to Roger when I say this, there is nothing keeping anyone at this table from closing their arms. We are like open-armed. Please bring us the opportunity to discuss and review something that is what the town wants. And that I can assure you that upon staff's receipt and review, it will, if it contains the significant changes that will have to come out of this conversation in these meetings that we keep referring to with DHCD, that it'll come to us as soon as staff can review that, and we will.
So whether we deny or whether we defer, we're still meeting with Secretary Holt.
Correct.
As
far as I know, I don't know why not.
Okay. And the only thing that would hold that up, if I understand from our attorney, is if they pursue litigation.
It won't hold it up. I just,
Okay.
they
Just
will
another
just
layer.
have to do that, and that may make them less likely to engage in conversation with you.
Okay.
It's not, in and of itself, it doesn't delay anything. It can be running alongside of whatever you're doing.
Okay.
So I have a question. In light of everything that's come in at the last moment, I look to you to give, the two of you to give me a recommendation, knowing full well I'll decide what I think is best, as that's your job and my job, to make a vote. But I do, as you know, look to you, and I take into consideration your wise counsel. What do you recommend?
On the spot.
Then I can then decide from.
Councilman Dyer, can I just ask as a layperson, not someone involved in construction, not someone in the law field, I think that if we've been told they have that opportunity, right? If someone were to file legal action against us, when we're also in the attempts to negotiate, just personally, I would feel like that strains the relationship. And so it feels like, in part of this discussion with Jeremiah, with Councilmember Schofield, that we're deferring it to avoid litigation still feels hostile to me.
So
just
that-
as a personal, because I don't go to court all the time. I don't, spend my time litigating things. So it's like, why can't we just, we talked before about a small town feel. The goal is to just aren't we all trying to save the buildings? Why can't we all just work together to do that? And how do we get to a collegial relationship with that as opposed to a litigious or...
I agree, but that's why I'm asking experts, as you know, I've said it 1,000, I'm a retired computer scientist and middle manager.
Right.
I've never been a town manager. I'd look to people who are experts to give people like me who got elected to cast a vote their best guess, and then I have to cogitate and then vote. I don't know, in light of what's happened today, what the two of them would recommend to us, or to me. So I've got to ask that before I then have to exercise my duty to just put forth a vote. I'm asking you what do you recommend to me? And I'm willing to do it in public.
But my stance all along has been, we need to get to a point where we're negotiating something.
Exactly.
And
what's best for that?
And there are two paths there. I see it as the deferral doesn't close the door for anything, and it does allow us to still negotiate whatever it is we need to negotiate.
Okay.
And then whatever then comes back before council, you can make the determination as whether or not you feel it's a significant enough change where you can send it back to planning commission and we can start this, or maybe the negotiations didn't work and there's not enough changes and we're not getting enough movement toward that middle, and then you can deny it then.
So my mind isn't made up. I'm not being absolutely firm.
understand.
Quite the reverse. I'm thinking I'm hearing you say that there's merit to taking the suggestion of deferring.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
So I would like to add too, Mark, you were talking about how we heard from 75.1% of the residents. We're not
71.4.
I'm sorry,
Not that I'm being precise.
70, whatever. But, if we defer this amendment, it's not like we're voting yes on it.
Correct.
We're just giving it some more time.
That's right.
So, and Mayor, I just want to talk to you a little bit about the secretary.
Yes.
Are you pretty confident that he is very familiar with what is going on here and what the text amendment was? I know you've had a couple of conversations with him. I mean, was it like a phone call out of the blue, hey, what's going on there, let me get my team on it? Or was it like specifics?
I would assume that Secretary Holt's phone call today to the town and to myself was provoked by reports from his deputy secretary,
Okay,
with whom I've had a great deal of contact.
yes.
I met with Secretary Holt almost 6 months ago now, 5 months ago. Actually, I met with him at the winter MML conference. When was that?
October,
Thank you. So it was fall.
yes.
So I met with him for the first time in October, and then I met with him again about a month or so later. And until today, I haven't spoken to him again.
Okay.
So I'm very, very sure that Deputy Secretary McAvoy is very much aware
Okay.
of all of our concerns. He's been watching the meetings and watching, including the public hearing last Tuesday. And I'm quite sure that his debriefing, I should say his briefing of that he had with the secretary, today is Monday, today led to probably the phone calls that ensued between both parties.
Okay. All right. And did they talk about a team coming down
Yes.
here, or would it be the deputy secretary? It sounds like the deputy secretary is very familiar with the
Yes.
case, and he would be the best guy to come down here.
Yes. So at this point, Secretary Holt, Deputy Secretary McAvoy has expressed to me that Secretary Holt's greatest concern from the beginning, all along, has been the preservation and rehabilitation of the historic buildings. And Secretary Holt, in that vein, is laser focused at this point on coming up with a strategy with all parties involved that will accomplish that goal. And I'm very excited to hear him say it for himself, because it's been communicated to me from Deputy Secretary, but Secretary Holt communicated that to me today. And I promised him that I would take into consideration all of what he said, and that I would give it consideration with respect to tabling it. But I did, as I mentioned on the outset, make it clear that our arms are open wide, no matter how you all decide to move forward this evening with the current petition. I do have a question, if I may, for Roger. The MOU, or the agreement between DHCD and yourselves with respect to the catalytic historic tax credit, has that been agreed to yet? Has that been signed by both parties?
It's not an MOU, it's an award letter. It's an additional tax credit.
So I'm aware of the award letter, but in order to move forward with your use of the catalytic historic tax credit, since we all know it's the native voyage for it, I was told that the actual agreement, and I believe it was referred to as an MOU. Legalese don't know if that's correct, but that it was being drafted, and that we had been given the opportunity to give our input into that process. And that was about 2.5 months ago. And so I was just curious if that had moved forward yet.
No, we've not
Okay.
seen anything. There will be implementation steps that
Okay.
are to follow.
Okay, very good. And within that MOU, I would, and this is for my council's sake, within that MOU, I hope to see some benchmarks, some sort of something that gives us confidence that moving forward we can see whatever it is coming to fruition that we ultimately hopefully come to terms on and agree about with respect to our conversations with the applicant and with the HCD. And so that MOU, again, don't know if that's proper terminology, but the memorandum of understanding between the applicant, or I should say the awardee of the catalytic historic tax credit, and DHCD, who administers the tax credit agreement itself, will reflect some opportunity for us to have some confidence in the historic building preservation.
And as an example of that, just to clarify your point about a benchmark.
Yes.
What you're looking for, and I don't want to put words in your mouth here, would be, let's say, $1 million is spent on the rehabilitation of the buildings by X date. Is that what you're thinking, or are you thinking something else?
I don't know if it'll be dollar mark benchmarks or dollar amount benchmarks or timing. I've been saying the words cold dark shell for a long time, and I dream about them being cold dark shells. I say it in my sleep, I'm told, and so I jest, but the idea is that I would like to see the buildings cold and dark and ready for whatever may become of them as far as redevelopment is concerned. And that is something I'd like to see as soon as possible. So those are the types of benchmarks I'm thinking about. I haven't written the MOU, but those were some concerns that were expressed on behalf of the town to DHCD over 2 months ago.
So Joe, if we table this, is there any work that staff would have to do at this point?
We'd have to attend a meeting, apparently.
I mean, obviously if there's a
But
meeting.
whether we table it or not, you have to attend a meeting.
Correct.
I mean, that's happening, regardless of whether we table or vote today on it. We're having the meeting with
I hope so. I'll be
the
there.
Secretary Holt.
We're in the meeting business, so.
So it's going to happen regardless of what we do today, that's happening.
I mean, would the petitioner plan to be there no matter what happens this evening at that meeting with the HCD and myself?
In all probability, but I would like to see, the state has stepped in and made a recommendation
Mm-hmm.
that is also our recommendation and request that we've had pending for a long time. I would prefer to see that be the path taken.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of fundamental understanding that
Mm-hmm.
we need to still
Mm-hmm.
work to put together. And I would love to see you embrace the opportunity that the state is extending.
But see, that's where the conflict again comes in. You make comments like it's something you've been asking for a long time, and we've been asking for things for a long time. So you've got to get away from that kind of language. You really do this, or we're not going to have cooperation. It's just not going to happen.
That goes back to my second two-part question. What specific things, rather than something, I'd like to see a document that answers these three questions. There's something specific that you could give us and then you could request from us. Something that he could give to you and you go, oh, this answers my question. 'Cause I hear a lot of, we ought to haves, right? I think that's what you're saying. I went down and checked the list. Are you happy now? And have your head go, yes, I am. And do the same with us. We got from you what we wanted. Thank you. We're good. That's what I'm after.
I guess I would just ask, regardless of whatever path we go down, these things coming 15 minutes before,
Yeah.
I can't. I work up until 15 minutes before I walk in this door. I have tons of time at other times, but it seems like consistently, every time I show up here for a meeting, either I'm handed something as we sit down or I'm handed an email 15 minutes before. I don't have the capacity to keep to get through it in a measured way.
And Councilwoman Guroff raises a good point. It's something I was thinking I would speak to, but now I'm going to. I think the goodwill gestures that are likely to be made this evening are done so for the right reasons. But I would like to see the energy and effort on the part of the petitioner to be one, not so much in. I feel like there have been some attempts to bully the mayor. That's how I feel. I feel like I've been. She says 15 minutes before the meeting. I feel like all of the communication that we have received in the past, I don't know, 3 to 4 weeks, from your attorney, and then also the blogs that you put on your Facebook page and the emails that you send out, and then post those emails on your website. That's the kind of negative energy that puts us in a place where we're even questioning this goodwill. Okay, and it's one thing to question process. It's another to before the answers to your questions about open meeting act is answered and a thorough review is done. It's one thing to let people know that you've submitted the complaint. It's another to say that the mayor has participated in off-record comments with the planning commission and so on and so forth, and then to ask me to recuse myself. These are the things that like make a person's wheels spin in place, because it puts us in a defensive posture. And I echo what Lisa is saying, because I believe that no one here at this table wants to A, not follow process, B, not want to include the public's input, and C, that wouldn't want to see a successful project through fruition and completion. And how we get there is what's been offered to us by DHCD today. I'll leave it at that.
I think that's for me why I feel like if we can just start fresh, all on the same team, with not with this, that amendment, that feedback, whatever. Start fresh. What's in the best interest of the buildings? How do we work together? I keep going back to it. Bring the small town feel. Like we work with our neighbors. We don't threaten lawsuits or, challenge integrity, or we come with open arms, with everything on the table and work together. And I worry that, sitting with something deferred just because we don't want to get litigation, it seems to me like it still feels hostile. Like, why can't we we've heard that this particular way it's written isn't what the town wants. So if we move past that and then just work together, clean slate, on the table, goodwill, start with the best of intentions, put the past in the past, and come with open arms. It seems to me, that's why for me it seems like that's, I'm not a lawyer. I don't like all that stuff.
Lisa, I gotta admit, I'm confused. See, I was one of the advocates of vote it down. He'd have to, so he doesn't have to explain to the commission why we didn't take the recommendation. And then I heard some cogent arguments about we should, for tactical reasons and as a gesture of cooperation. But now I'm confused whether you want to table it, which I don't think everyone does, or
I think the gesture is to remove it from the discussion, is to move past the text amendment, not defer it, vote on it tonight with all the recommendations and voices that we've gotten. We're going to meet with Secretary Holtz anyway. Why don't we start with all the options on the table, as opposed to meeting with Secretary Holtz with just the text amendment, and then we have any option to bring forward, and that seems like a better gesture of goodwill to me than here's the only thing we can talk about.
So the reason
we're only going to do it because we don't want litigation, or we don't want, that just feels like more threats and more hostility than, let's put the past in the past, let's start fresh and work together to move forward. To me, that's a gesture of goodwill.
I guess what's not a gesture of goodwill to me is that what's provoking the potential of litigation is if we made a decision tonight. When we would make a decision, if we were to make a decision about the zone text amendment, we did the first step there in terms of trying to, get to this whatever clean slate. It's not really a clean slate, right? Because we've just made a decision to essentially say, no, we're not game for this option.
For this specific one.
That's right. So what Joe is telling us is that every option is still on the table, even if we defer. Now, if Joe were to tell me not every option is on the table, so we can't go there, then maybe I'd have a little bit different opinion. But we haven't said yes or no to anything by deferring. And, you know, if all we do for the next 3 months or 5 months or 6 months is spin in mud and get frustrated, I still think that that goodwill that was afforded for that period of time is worth it. And it's worth it for the longer term game, because there's a lot. If it doesn't work with one group of folks, then maybe it can work with another group of folks. And I guess it's just one of these things where it's, you know, what's important is that we figure out how to, I don't know, look at all the different possible stakeholders that are out there, and you know, be mindful of how to get to a place where, said a lot of things. Let me go backwards. I think the collegial approach right now is defer. That's what I think the collegial process is. I'll stop there.
So I will say that I was kind of on your camp, but I mean, now we have the state that is on our side. I mean, I feel like the state is on our side now. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's like they have worked through these things before. They're getting involved. And they're asking for us to defer. They're not asking for us to accept it. They're just say, hey, just give us some more time.
I guess I didn't hear that they're asking now to defer. They're saying whatever we decide, they'll support us coming together.
No, the phone call from Secretary Holt today was to ask us to defer the vote.
Right, but
this
when
evening.
you spoke with him,
And when I spoke with him, I indicated to him that deferring it,
that if we don't defer,
I
are they
indicated to
still-
him that the action this evening is mutually exclusive
Right.
from the opportunity for the applicant to come to the table with us and DHCD and create a new text amendment.
I guess where I
Petition.
struggle with the deferment is the way it's written today. 10 months from now, if it's still written the exact same way, we're still going to deny it.
Correct.
So it's still going to be amended either way. Right?
Cut to the chase.
It is going to be amended either way. We're not. I mean, that's why I heard loud and clear from my neighbors. Was the way it is written, it will never be supported.
If you change all the happies to glad and glads to happy, it's still going to be voted down.
Correct.
But
it's
if they want to
still-
change the substance,
But then when they change it, it still has to go back to planning commission.
Yes.
It still has to, so it's
The process.
fundamentally going to be different anyway. So even if we defer the text amendment now, whatever we send in, it's going to be different anyway, right?
True.
So then I don't understand why we table it and not just start fresh with something new.
I think because the state asked us to defer it. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
carries some weight.
Carry some weight.
Sure.
So Joe, if we
It has
defer-
changed my opinion from no to I'll tell you, I have been convinced.
So, are there any more comments?
Got one more comment.
Okay.
Joe, if it's deferred, there's no time limit on that, right?
No,
I
I mean, the council could set a postponement date to say, we will take this up again at X time. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing that, because we don't know.
No, but let's say 3 weeks from now, nothing's going on. We could say, hey, we're gonna take this up again.
So I have an idea based on that. Why don't we make a motion, or why don't we entertain making a motion that includes a couple conditions? If we were to make a motion to defer the vote, that it would be with the condition that we would expect to come to the table with the HCD within the next 2 weeks, which Secretary Holt said he believes is completely doable from his perspective, and that there's a memorandum of understanding signed within 2 weeks as well, so that we all can have confidence that there are plans to move forward with preserving and saving the buildings.
What are you contemplating in an MOU?
I'm contemplating that there be an MOU that both parties would agree to with respect, and it would include some benchmarks for moving forward with beginning to stabilize the buildings, no matter their end use.
Mayor, can I make a comment?
Please.
Current contract has those benchmarks in it, correct?
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And those benchmarks have not been met.
that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Good
So
point.
the 2 weeks I think is a little compressed. That would be, well,
Well, no, I spoke to the secretary about that as well.
okay.
And he believes that a 2 to 3 week time frame is completely doable with respect to the MOU.
Could we delay, make it 3 because dates and calendar are always closer than
Sure,
that?
we can say a month. I don't care.
So I will make a motion to defer 2022-03.
That public
comment.
hearing was closed.
I don't want to comment, I just want to ask a question.
Well, so I'm not sure I can do that. In fact, I can't. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You were in the middle of a motion.
Motion to defer 22-03 to the, to be taken up and vote the first June meeting of the mayor and town council.
With the expectation, if I may amend it.
Yeah, you will please amend it.
With,
because I didn't want
with
to
the
put words in.
expectation that we will be receiving a revised, substantively different version of this text amendment request, this petition, and that things will move as expeditiously as possible from the perspective of the town when we do receive that.
Could I amend it to be the first July, the first meeting in July instead? Or is
That's
that,
given them 2 months.
I know,
And I don't think I'm going to be here at that meeting. Let me
or
see.
second?
It won't.
We only
Really
have
be-
one meeting in June.
Right,
one meeting in
right,
July.
I will not be here for the July meeting.
Just to muddy the water a little bit more.
Sure.
The June meeting, the regularly scheduled June meeting is actually at the same time as the municipal league meeting. The following Monday is the newly recognized holiday of Juneteenth. So
Yes.
at the very earliest, we'd be meeting June 21st,
Third Monday.
third Tuesday.
What, the first June meeting? I know there's only one meeting, so.
The only, yeah.
So,
That changes my opinion then, because that's like 45-ish days or so from
You're
now.
talking middle of June.
Okay, I'll take
so
back
the motion
my
has been
amendment.
on the table and has been amended by the mayor.
I don't even know what we're, what is the motion?
I've lost the bubble, yeah.
The motion is to defer the amendment 2022-03,
Defer acting on the amendment,
defer acting on the
on
amendment
the ordinance number 2022-03.
2023,
Mhm.
with the caveat of, and take it up again in the first June meeting.
Which would
The
be,
only meeting in
At
June.
the earliest, June 21st.
With the caveat of,
With the caveat that we are expecting receipt of a substantively different petition from the developers.
So to clarify, with a meeting with the secretary?
Well, of course,
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
just so I'm clear.
yes.
Because again, I want to move past people just, the group, the Warfield group making something in isolation, us talking about it, like.
Yeah.
I want us to come together, make it together, so we know we're gonna move forward together.
Okay.
I think we all are agreeing with that. Leo seconded it. I don't want to take your thunder there, Mayor.
No, thank you. Councilman Keenan is
Second.
with the second. Are there any more reasons or any further debate or discussion on the motion? Okay, let's call for a vote. All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
So the motion passes with a vote of 6-1, and that is to defer acting on ordinance number 2022-03 zoning text amendment, Planned Employment Center District, until at this time, the June meeting, which will be June 21st at the earliest. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
everybody.
You too.
Thank you.
Good night.
We got more.
Okay.
Budget.
So our next item of unfinished business is to discuss fiscal year 2023 draft budget. Joe, I turn to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So again, this is a continuation. This was introduced at our last meeting, and then tonight would be an opportunity for everyone to ask questions. I will have a brief presentation. I'll go through it, not super quick, but this is kind of in place of what we would normally do as a workshop format. But rather than having a separate workshop, we just wanted to go ahead and put it on a regular council agenda. So again, jumping right into our general revenues, real estate taxes are obviously our highest revenue category. We discussed briefly last time the constant yield rate. So again, we are proposing maintaining the local tax rate at 0.33 cents per $100 of assessed value. That is higher than the constant yield rate by about a cent and a half. Actually, I think it's 1.4 cents. That represents roughly 7.5% increase in what, as far as estimated revenue is going to be.
Joe, you're going to publicize that, correct? You have to.
Yes, yeah, that's part of the requirements. Is you have to not only publicize the budget document, but you also have to publicize the rate that's associated with it. So we'll actually, on May 23rd, we'll actually be having 2 public hearings, one for the rate and then one for the budget itself. I'm showing there on the screen net assessable real property of almost $510 million. That is an increase of about $30 million, $30 million from last fiscal year. So again, and that's a combination of factors. It's either new building or reassessments that have been put on the tax rolls. You multiply that times the tax rate, and that's how you get the estimated tax revenue. Income tax, obviously the next highest revenue category. It's always difficult to predict, but we always use the running average. I like to use the 3-year running average. So right now we're averaging around $961,000 in revenues. The proposed budget has basically $100,000 less than that in there, so there's still some wiggle room in case there was something that we had to do or change. We don't want to get it too close to the average just because, again, you just don't know if you're actually going to collect all of that.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see, moving on to highway user revenues. This is actually good news because we are moving closer to pre-pandemic levels in highway user revenue collections. This all goes to our repaving effort and sidewalk improvements throughout town. Right now, I think the only roads that we've identified is the road that actually leads to the Public Works building is starting to deteriorate, and the Springfield Avenue on the other side of 32, basically over at Parkside, is showing some significant wear. So those are the 2 areas that we've identified now, but we believe there'll be money left over to attack some other areas in town that we may need.
Is that road on the other side of 32 ours to maintain currently, all the way down around the roundabout and over towards the park and around the building? Is that ours right now?
My understanding is it's Springfield Avenue, basically from the intersection down to the roundabout, and then it's Warfield Drive that goes around. That's all town maintained.
All right, thank you.
And then some fund balances that are there within the budget that we are utilizing. So the Capital Reserve Fund, which is obviously where all of our capital projects are identified. We are showing $191,000 from Capital Reserve, which we'll talk about projects here in a few minutes. The unassigned fund balance, which is basically our savings account. There is money coming out of there for various building repairs. And the reason we're using it from the unassigned fund balance is because some of the building maintenance projects that we've identified are relatively low cost, but there's enough of them that it brings it up to a little under $60,000 there. So it doesn't necessarily qualify for a capital project because usually those are $10,000 and above. It's kind of semantics, so it's like we could put it in a capital reserve fund and take it from that, but I figured just because it was none of the individual projects themselves made it or hit that capital project level, we just started taking the money from the unassigned fund balance instead. That 62 does include not just building repairs, but also we have a new website identified in next fiscal year's budget to redesign our website. It's roughly a $15,000 price tag, so that's also included in that 62 number. And then finally, at least in that category, was the restricted fund balance from the gatehouse, the $52,500 for, it's partially building repairs, or actually most of that is building repairs, but we also pay 50% of the curator salary out of this restricted fund. I will say this, that typically at the end of the fiscal year, if we do have funds remaining, if we're, let's just say, positive in the budget, we don't have to use that money to offset that curator salary. So again, that's a decision. We like to go ahead and budget it that way, but it's not necessarily something we have to use. And then switching to expenditures, again, we budget for salary increases. This year, we're basically factoring in a 2% COLA. I know we've talked at the strategic planning session about moving that to a merit increase, and we can still do that. But again, there is that 2% that's built into most salaries. We are looking at 2 new staffing positions, which are the 2 certified police officers that are currently in the at the academy. And then there's no other new positions being proposed. We do want to point out 11% increase in just the health benefit for the town. This has been ticking up year after year. This is expected, but as we obviously expand staff and you have the added health benefit, that category obviously keeps growing. And then obviously increases to all other employee benefits, again for the same reason. But most notably, I do like to point it out that the LEOPS contribution did go up by more than 30% this year. And again, that's a combination of multiple things, but obviously when you add more officers that are going to participate in that program, obviously the expense goes up.
Is there an expectation that LEOPS is going to keep jumping like that over the next few years?
It's not. It shouldn't increase that much because, again, a lot of that increase is because we've been adding officers that are now participating in it.
Okay.
The percentage that the town owes as part of that is substantial. Again, that program is just more expensive because the benefit pays out a lot earlier because the officers are allowed to retire, I believe, at 55 instead of 65. So again, that's why it's as expensive as it is. And then going to capital expenditures, again, these are just the general capital expenditures, not including any of the ARPA money. But we are looking at a new vehicle for the police department, new replacement mowers for the Public Works Department. We do need to look at additional storage for the Public Works Department. Again, because of a council priority that we're going to be looking at 714 Sandusky. Again, if that building goes away, we need space somewhere else to put the equipment that's stored there. And then 2 big projects for Parks and Recreation. These are both grant-funded projects. The Linear Trail Learning Park is basically what we've coined it. We do not have a design for it yet, but the town did receive a Community Parks and Playgrounds grant of $100,000. This is the area next to basically on the linear trail off of Colorama Road. There's a little bit of an open space there next to the swing set. We're going to do a park there. And then the trail improvements at Cooper Park, and I call it the mini or linear trail, which is basically that small trail that goes from the end of Jennifer Way down to Oklahoma. There's an area in there that's been washed out for a while now that does need attention. And the trail improvements that I'm talking about at Cooper Park are in all likelihood the replacement of the bridges that are there. Yes, ma'am.
Are you done with the?
Sure.
Okay. The vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Why standard combustion and not another Tesla?
We are still evaluating the Tesla. Again, it's still meeting all of our expectations right now, but because it's only been in service for 3 months, maybe that. Yeah. So because it kind of took us a while to get it in operation, we don't want to jump the gun and order another one before we've had a chance to really evaluate this one. Plus, in all likelihood, the vehicle that we'll be buying will be for, let's just call it command staff, not chief, but command staff.
Have you received any comments from your officers about the vehicle of any kind, like I hate it, I love it, or anything in between?
All favorable so far, very much so.
Thank you.
There's been a lot of positive feedback on the Tesla.
I spoke to an officer on the street and he seemed pleased, but that was one data point, now I have 2.
Yeah. I know Chief's been busy over there, I guess, looking at, I don't know if there have been reporters. Who are the people that were there today? There seems like there's somebody taking pictures of some of our police
It's a
cruisers
social media
once or
site
twice a week.
called Cruiser Vids that wanted to highlight several of our cars, and the first was the Tesla. So if you're on Instagram, go to Cruiser _Vids.
Right after this
We're a
meeting.
popular car.
Chief, if you want to get the Cybertruck, you might want to put an order now because it's about a 3-year delay. So
Did you hear that? 3-year delay?
Yeah, so by the time you're ready.
Pumping the brakes on the Cybertruck,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Well, Tesla's pumping the brakes on the Cybertruck.
Yeah.
3-year delay.
Comes with a free subscription to Twitter. Sorry.
You're welcome. That was well
But it
done.
won't stop a brick.
So then continuing with capital expenditures, and these are mostly items that are now going to be available. Not only are they set council priorities, but they're also, most of these are being paid from the ARPA funding
Yes.
that we've received. So again, number one is the Baldwin Drive and Baldwin Lot improvements. Again, most of this money is specific for design and engineering, with the idea that next fiscal year, or the next fiscal year, FY24, is when we actually start construction on a lot of this. So again, $85,000 for the Baldwin Lot and Baldwin Drive improvements. Oklahoma Avenue between Baldwin and Maine. Again, it just made sense that if we're going to be doing work at Baldwin Drive, to go ahead and continue that through Oklahoma to Main Street. So again, just a coordinating issue there. The 714 Sandusky Site. So again, this is design, I guess, and scheduling of the demolition of the building, plus all the site improvements that would be necessary over there. It would also include the design of a pad-ready site to be built along Townhouse Drive to make it, blend in a little more with some of the retail structures that are already on Main Street. At least certainly better than the garage building that's there now. Stormwater improvements, which are both the Norwood Avenue and Central Avenue improvements. This would be design and construction. The Central Avenue ones in particular would be coordinated with state highways as they're doing the work, the stormwater work along Springfield Avenue. Norwood is one that as soon as we design it, we could build it because there's no real other coordination that would have to happen there.
So the central one, we're tying into the state.
Correct.
All right, great.
Norwood would tie into existing infrastructure that the town already owns and controls.
Yep.
And then the apple butter warehouse, this would just be for the feasibility study and to get us moving down that path of making the necessary improvements to that building. The capital improvement plan does include monies there for an announcement to be made later.
Excellent.
And then finally,
Just one comment on those.
Sure. Yeah.
Those are not all of the capital expenditures that we like to do as part of the comprehensive plan, but it's a good start, right? That's the plan.
That's correct. So
Yeah,
again,
just want to
these-
make sure the public knows.
Yeah, these are the ones that were identified that had the highest priorities during our strategic planning session. So these are the ones that are getting funding at least first. Doesn't mean that at the end of the day we won't, we'll hopefully be able to tackle more of these.
Thanks, Jeremiah.
And then the last slide I had here is really just to talk about fund balances. This doesn't necessarily impact the fiscal year budget. It's more of the balance sheet that you get every month. It just shows you kind of what these categories are and what each of those amounts are made of. So this is as of April 30th. The receivables are just non-spendable monies of $57,000. These are monies that are owed to us or services that we've already paid for but haven't received yet. So again, it's basically just a holding category. The restricted fund, or is this gatehouse kind of endowment fund that's been sitting out there that we are utilizing a little bit every year. The Warfield escrow funds that we hold on our books are in there, and then that note receivable is also part of that $2.4 million. The assigned fund balances are really all of our reserve accounts: capital reserve, repaving reserve, and the impact fee funds. The capital reserve, I want to say, is around the $390,000 mark. The repaving reserve is set at $250,000, and then impact fees, I forget the number off the top of my head, but these are basically all the impact fees that have been paid from the townhouses over at Parkside. So we do have set aside a stabilization reserve of $1 million. And then we have the unrestricted fund balance, which is really the town savings account. So that's money that's available to us to utilize as you see fit. And then that is the basics of the budget in 10 minutes.
Well done.
So again, obviously, if there's any specific questions about the budget document itself, any of the narrative that was included, either in what I just said or what everybody received last time, certainly here to answer any questions. And then, like I said, on May 23rd, we will be having 2 public hearings, one of which will be to adopt the tax rate, the 0.33 cents per 100, and then to adopt the budget itself. And both of those have been advertised.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
So Joe, I just have a couple questions, actually just one. There's no impact fees being budgeted for this year, so we're
Correct.
assuming that right now Warfield will not be building anything else.
All of the Parkside townhouses, at least the building permits have been pulled. So unless there's something dramatic that happens between now and the end of next fiscal year, we're not anticipating any new impact fees paid.
So no new houses either on double lots or anything that's going on in town? That, I mean, it's not enough to budget up.
There's just not enough to budget.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, again, if
What, you
there's
trying to tell us something about your lot?
No,
Okay.
no, I just noticed all the running I've been doing. I noticed a house go up
Yeah.
here in the middle of somewhere, so
Yeah,
that's all.
tell around.
again, if there's one or two, we'll obviously add it to the budget, but, again, for forecasting purposes, there's nothing that we anticipate.
And in lieu of the current gas price, do you feel you've added enough padding in there to cover a year expense at, let's say, gas $5 a gallon? I know that was increased about 15 or 20% on each
It was.
budget item, so.
As long as it doesn't increase any more, then I think we're in pretty good shape. Obviously, if it continues to creep up, then that's definitely a category that we'll have to reevaluate.
So diesel is outrageous, so.
It's
Yeah.
pretty salty right now.
$6.
And is the maintenance guys, are the garbage trucks are diesels, right?
They are.
Yeah, okay.
We haven't gone electric yet.
Yet.
So I'm just.
I do something about a Cybertruck.
Yeah, you're pretty sure that those numbers will be good as is. You don't think we need to increase them before we pass the budget?
Not yet. I think
Okay.
we're in good shape. And obviously, we do 2 budget revisions
Right.
every year. So if by Christmas we're not tracking the way we expect to be, then we can always adjust it.
Okay. I don't have any further questions, just this.
Thank you for your thoughtful comments, Councilman Grassley. Anyone else?
I had one, the bad debt expense of 22,000. I didn't think we had any debt, and so maybe I didn't understand
Nope,
that.
you're right. We don't have debt. So this is one of those small accounting things that drives me crazy. And this was actually a recommendation by our former auditor now. So we accrue interest on the note that has not been paid yet from Warfield. And as that interest accrues, we have to account for it somewhere. So we account for it in the interest revenue, and then the bad debt expense zeroes out some of that interest that we're not collecting, so that we're not then spending money that we're not actually seeing within the budget. So that's really just a cancellation. That's why it's in there. Did I explain that about right?
Dead on.
Thank you.
Except for the small piece that I actually recommended.
There it is.
Sorry.
I was actually going to correct Joe,
Yeah, sorry.
which I don't ever have to do, but when you're in the room and he's giving credit to an auditor when it's due to our treasurer, it's coming your way, Craig.
Pain in the butt.
Thank you, Craig.
No.
Thank you.
Explained very well. Joe explained very well.
Anyone else? Cool. All right, well then, we'll just move on to our next item of business here, which is our announcements and reports. I will begin with the announcement that our next meeting is scheduled for May 23rd at 7 p.m. here. It is a Monday. Our volunteer opportunities remain as listed: Historic District Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, Police Auxiliary, and Crossing Guard. Please email town@sykesville.net for more info about volunteering with the town. That brings us to staff updates. Craig, your treasurer's report is on the docket. Would you like to start?
Sure. Sure numbers exactly what you want to keep going down. I'll try to make this brief because I'm sure you're getting worn out by everything tonight. At this time, everyone, good evening.
Good
I'd
evening.
like to present the April Treasury's report. It was pretty, so I say dull month. It was not very exciting. There's nothing in here that really came out and jumped at me like, oh, I need to mention this. Revenues were low. That's an April type of trend. I think if you go back prior Aprils, you always see that it tends to kind of get a little lull right here, right before the income tax starts to flow in May and June. Of course, with that said, I think last month we looked and we were ahead of budget by about $645,000. Now it's around the $359 area, which obviously we also had some extra expenditures in there that we normally don't do, some one-offs, and obviously accelerated that too. So I think with that, you'll find the April expenses will lead to May revenue. So not to use a Spring Lake analogy, but in terms of just quickly, in terms of the expenditures, I think they're all straightforward. There was a couple, high ones in there, but nothing really crazy. You're not probably seeing it there, but the quick go back, actually to go back, when the highway user revenue almost down, we actually got, last week we got 30,000 in, so that almost put us right up to the budget, with still like 3 months to go, so really good shape there. So obviously income tax is the last one that's gonna come wheelbarrowing in here soon enough, so.
Always lags, so.
Yeah. So in terms of expenditures, I think if you've reviewed it, I'm sure with everything going on last week, you probably haven't, but we'll just quickly zoom down there. You had like 12,000 for Cunningham Recreation because we had ordered some linear trail exercise equipment. It was a deposit. We have 25,000 to Grand Turk for trash truck repairs and work that we've done on the 2006 International Trash Truck. 23,000 to KCI for engineering for capital project concepts. 15 to Raincliff, finally, for the annual trash rebate that everybody reminded me that I had been tardy on. And then 10,000 for the Sykesville Freedom District Fire Department. That the
What's
check
that
is
for?
definitely waiting to go. It's going to go there soon. It's going to be delivered very soon, but
It's in the books, that's all that matters.
it's in the books. Yes, the
Make it happen.
cash has already been put aside, so that's the good part about that. Other than that, I don't know if anybody has any questions.
So with 2 months to go in the budget, you're feeling pretty confident everything's gonna be going just fine?
I think so.
Okay. I mean, it looks
I feel
good to
very
me, but I was
confident.
just wondering.
I feel very good about it, this position.
Appreciate you getting that to the fire department. I did notice that.
It's funny, they never really speak out, but I guess they really can't. They can't, like, where's our money? Where's our donation? But they never do, although it is much higher this year than it was a year ago.
I have
Twice
a
as
quick
much.
question.
Sure.
Our contribution to the downtown Sykesville connection, does it follow our fiscal year? Because it says it's the fourth quarter installment.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, right on. So that was the last one for the fiscal year.
2022. Okay.
Yes.
Good deal.
Just to tack on to the treasurer's report real quick, I will let everybody know that Craig and I are hopefully meeting with one of the new auditing firms next week.
Well, they haven't quite set it up yet, so we have narrowed down to two CPA firms. Both have given proposals at this point. One was a little bit more reasonable than the other one, so we're going to bring them for kind of a meet and greet, get to them and vice versa, see how we are, see how they are. I feel pretty confident that it's a good firm to go with. I have prior knowledge of them and experience with them. So
Well, thank you for your work on that, Craig.
But,
Super important.
you thought as many proposals, or I should say requests for proposal I put out there, you thought it had a little bit more response, so I'm not sure what the quirks are with this town. That seems to make people shy, but I'm sure Warfield's not helping. So, enough said.
And then lastly, with the order, or with the budget adoption scheduled for next meeting, I will tell you that we will also be introducing the budget revision for the end of the fiscal year. So we'll have a lot of numbers again for you.
More numbers.
Very good.
Awesome.
So not a comment for this, but maybe a comment for the next meeting.
Sure.
So, I mean, we've been a year that we've been debt-free.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I think that that's a great celebration opportunity for us to be able to say that we're still debt-free. And it'd be great if you knew, and I know that there's not very many municipalities that are debt-free throughout the state. It might be, something just to tell the community to say, hey, we're one of however many. The last number I'd heard was 3, but it may be different now in terms of that. So it's just good. It's a
Good
good
PR.
thing for everything that all of us are trying to do to manage the finances and what you're doing, Craig, every single day. So it's notable.
Thank you.
Deal.
Good.
All right. So we can
Is that
move
it?
on. I believe so, Craig. Yes.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that brings us to our public safety report. Chief Spalding, please. Thank
Good
you.
evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I will try to keep it brief as well. I know we're running a little late here. I did want to thank you all for the proclamation and let you know it means an awful lot to us. As a historical reference, I don't know if you knew this, but JFK was actually the one that started the National Police Week in 1962. And it's continued ever since then. And like I said, it means an awful lot to us. I did want to mention, just real briefly, last year there was 617 line of duty deaths in the country, of which a large part were due to COVID, actually 439. That was actually a 49% increase from the prior year. So the line of duty deaths have definitely gone up. This year already we're at 102 and just into 5 months. So unfortunately the trend is continuing. And I did want to real briefly just mention the 4 Maryland officers that lost their lives in 2021. Corporal Christine Peters was with Greenbelt Police Department, and she was killed while directing traffic. Corporal Heath Heacook was killed from Delmar Police Department while responding to basically a disturbance at a residence. He was by himself, had no backup, and he was brutally assaulted by a male there that had just assaulted an elderly couple across the street. Officer Kiona Holly, you probably remember this one from Baltimore City, was executed while sitting in her patrol vehicle in Baltimore City. They've actually named a new law this year that was proposed in Annapolis after her. And lastly, Officer Mike Santangelo from Frederick Police Department died from complications of COVID. Was a decorated member of the department. He had contracted COVID in the line of duty and unfortunately lost his life. So I did want to just mention that real briefly.
Thank you.
Public safety report, as you can see, somewhat of a busy month, 441 total events. 8 incident reports were written during that period. Again, patrol checks were up. Community policing was up, as you all like to see. Most of those, I think, if not all of them, were Rad Darby. Just continues to do a phenomenal job. We have to continue to buy more giveaway stuff because he just gives it away. Seems like every shift, but that's what we've asked him to do. So, doing a great job. Any questions on any of the incidents? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. It is number, oh my goodness, I just saw it. Number 60, with respect to the vandalism in the women's bathroom at the post office.
Right.
Chief, was that done, first of all, the vandalism itself, could you describe it for me?
It was graffiti, I believe. There was actually the 2 cases, the men's bathroom down at Cooper Park and then the women's bathroom here at Visitor Center.
Equal opportunity vandalism.
Yeah, it didn't appear to be from the same perpetrator. I think in the case of the bathroom down here, they were able to, I think Derek was able to remove it from the mirror. It was a white, almost like a chalk or a white marker.
Okay.
The other one was a white spray paint.
Okay.
And it was graffiti and letters in both cases,
Okay.
but it didn't appear to be similar style or a similar logo.
And if we had to guess time frame of, I assume it was after dark that took place?
In both cases, it was the officers that found it early that morning when they were unlocking the bathroom, so it apparently had happened overnight.
Thank you.
But I've asked the officers to continue their patrol checks there, and hopefully we'll be able to catch somebody eventually.
Yeah.
So there was no damage, it was just graffiti?
It was.
Like there was no broken glass or anything?
No, it was, I don't know if it was etched onto the glass. I can't remember. Derek said he had taken care of it, but it was a mark on the glass in one case and then a spray paint on the wall.
Okay.
I think in both cases they were able to remove it.
Great, all right, thank you.
That's all I have. Anyone else?
Nope.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Keep up the good work, Chief.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, that brings us to our council committee reports. We'll start at my far right, and anyone that has anything to share with us, feel free to do so.
Sure. As you know, we had a rainy Art and Wine Festival, but it actually still worked out. And as always, I want to praise the police, the auxiliary, and the Public Works Department for all their work that day. It was a soggy mess from go, but they were out there and they did their work, and it was great. And this is going to sound weird, but honestly, the rain events or the poor weather events, I think, actually help us from not being overwhelmed. I think if it had been a beautiful sunny day, it would have been wall-to-wall people, and it would have been out of control. But it was manageable, it worked. I felt bad for the attendees because 4 out of 5 of the food vendors canceled out. We only had one food vendor, the pizza group, and they ran out of pizza by 2:30 because they were the only food vendor.
Wow.
But everybody seemed to have a good time. We had a great group of new volunteers, which was nice to see. So we'll be getting ready for the next event. Let's see here. And the cigarette receptacles were installed by the town, and they were in use, especially the Freddie Mercury one. That got some use there. I just also be using that. Let's see. We got a $3,000 grant from M&T for the Craft Beer Festival in November. Just got that today. The Downtown Sykesville Connection is moving into their new space as we speak. 3rd floor above the Gossage building, and should be fully in there by Thursday. Be nice to have him actually downtown for downtown Sykesville. And they, Julie and the mayor are going to National Main Street Conference in Richmond that starts this weekend. And Farmers Market opens this weekend as well, May 15th, 9 to 1. Orioles Bird will be there as usual as the first attendee, so come on out.
Does the Oriole bird have a name?
Don't know. Somebody Google
I
it
grew up
now.
in Pennsylvania, and I just think all mascots usually have names. Just Oriole bird, huh? All right.
Dirty birds.
I was gonna say it's a bird, yeah.
And the footprint for the, you guys want to pass it? These are different maps of the footprint for the farmers market. We're spreading out a little bit more. There's going to be several vendors, hopefully down here by Ale House Insurance, instead of just one that we were sticking there before. One by the distillery, 3 or 4 in the parklet, trying to get more out on Main Street so that people actually go out to the businesses as well.
Love it. Thank you, Leo.
Thanks.
Anything to share with us, Al?
No, good.
How about you, Lisa?
So continue to get more vendors for the movies from the town, so that's welcomed and appreciated. And that starts this summer. Otherwise, nothing else from Parks and Rec, although the zip line continues to be functional.
Oh, dang.
No, jinx it. Why do you bring that up?
Watch here.
But,
It's a good thing. It's a positive report.
Okay.
we did have to replace one of the bumpers at the end. That was so it's like that.
Yeah, but it's still
it didn't,
up.
Yeah, it didn't stop the functionality.
And just wanted to recognize that this Sunday, there is the first Carroll County Veteran Celebration at the Carroll County Farm Museum. So for all of our veterans, family members, there's going to be a lot of vendors and services there. So definitely something the county's doing. I think we should support.
Excellent. Thank you. President Carter.
Yes, the HDC, Historic District Commission, is meeting tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. We're going to have a hybrid meeting. Some of us are going to be here in person at 7 o'clock, and others will be via Zoom.
Okay.
So whatever's your fancy, come join us. It's going to be a full
You
meeting.
got a long list of applications.
Yes, we do.
From the facade improvement grant process. Is that it?
I don't know.
I believe so.
Most of them are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Jeremiah.
No planning commission on May 2nd. The next planning commission is scheduled for June 6th at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councilman Dyer.
I don't have anything except for the fact that I did take a tour of the makerspace in Westminster Library.
Oh, wonderful.
It's paradise down there.
Paradise by
Nerd
the
paradise.
Man's
It's a
dashboard.
nerd paradise.
Like, got it. Okay. Well, that just makes me want to go do the same. So put that on my calendar. So we do have members of the public that will have to go into a moment of recess, I guess, before we go into closed session, so that we can go into closed session. But first, I'll read that our closed session meeting is proposed to be closed pursuant to the general provision article of the annotated Code of Maryland, excuse me, section 3-305B, 7, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter, and 8, to consult with staff, consultants, thank you, or other individuals about pending or potential litigation. Consult with legal counsel, Open Meetings Act complaint and potential litigation, Warfield.
Motion for a 5-minute recess.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We are now in recess.
We have something for you, Mayor.